in my head, when you're saying it's about the type of exercise to get some kind of physiological response, I'm thinking eccentric exercise to create some kind of muscle damage.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to try and achieve improvements in hypertrophy, you want to increase the amount of muscle damage. So I'm thinking, I don't know, whatever sport, but also like, say, I don't know, bodybuilding. I can imagine bodybuilders being really drawn to this level of recovery because if they can create as much muscle damage as possible, quicken the level of recovery, then they can get back to training to create more muscle damage, and the cycle keeps repeating, but it does it in a quicker way.
Yes, but I guess there is there's another grey area there, or like maybe a minefield, and that is so. If we're using these recovery strategies like compression garments to reduce inflammation, and we're using them all the time, we know that inflammation is important for adaptation. So a lot of your adaptation happens in the recovery phase and is driven by the inflammatory response. So if you're minimizing the inflammatory response, is that having a negative effect on adaptation? So are you affecting adaptation by doing so? There isn't any research that has specifically looked at compression having an effect on adaptation, but we know there is emerging research in cold water immersion that suggests frequent use of cold water immersion to reduce the inflammatory response is blunting adaptation.
Okay,
so there's one study that's been done that I know of that it's a training study. So 2 groups of individuals did the same strength training. One group had cold water immersion after the sessions. The other group didn't. And the strength gains were greater in the group that did not have the cold water immersion. So I would be wary of wearing compression garments all the time. My advice would be to not rely on them as a recovery modality after every exercise session. But if you're doing your event like a half an Ironman where you're expecting to feel sore afterwards, you've probably done your training and you've got your adaptation up to that point. So I would wear the garment after that event to help with the recovery and the reduction of negative symptoms afterwards.